Please help me welcome J Loren Norris.
Have you ever asked a question that you never really got an answer to? Those important questions like, where were you on Friday night? They don't seem that complicated, but sometimes the answer is more revealing than you really want to know the answer to. And sometimes the answer you get has nothing to do with the question. It's a leadership tactic. It's a political tactic. It's a relational tactic. And that's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. Sometimes you ask a question that, like a good attorney, you already know the answer to. You ask a question and you maybe at least have a pretty good idea that you know the answer to the question. In fact, you might even think when you ask the question, it's a little bit rhetorical. It's a rhetorical question because you know what you expect them to say. And then sometimes the answer that you get has absolutely nothing to do with the question that you asked. I've been in this, I don't want to call it a heated debate, but we've been known to have some really heated debates with a friend of mine. We've been doing business and ministry together almost 30 years now. And one of the things that we're in heated discussion about is this use of AI for solving problems. Now, I don't want to bemoan the idea of AI and its unbelievably vast access to knowledge because it's there. AI's ability to find, to parse, to collaborate, to compare, to contrast wisdom, knowledge, and information. There's no human that even comes close. I don't deny that at all. I don't know anybody who could read enough books, store enough memory in their head. And there are some great, phenomenal memory-keeping people out there. And there's some great scientists who understand the neurology and the science of thought process and psychology and emotional control that are way beyond me. Dr. Caroline Leaf, Daniel Pink, Daniel Amen, Robert Cialdini, Bruce Lipton. I study all of these people, and I can only contain a fragment of what each of them know. I can only absorb and compare and contrast so much information from all of those sources. But then if you set them aside and you move into the world of physics and sciences and nuclear fusion versus petroleum, I can study only so much of that before my brain explodes, and the ability to parse that information, to compare it, to contrast it, and figure out what is the juxtaposition between those pieces of information. I have limited capacity and, frankly, limited time to be able to do that. AI is constrained by neither the capacity or the time. In fact, its thought processes are so fast that if you were to ask a question and look for an answer from all of the names that I've just listed, within a couple of minutes, AI could bring back an answer. And, in theory, it would be a solid, accurate, well thought out answer. But if you've ever asked a question that has the nuances of human soul buried in it, what were you doing on Friday night? Well, there's a technical, legal, physical definition of where I was, who I was with, what activities we were engaged in. I mean, that's probably evidenced by tracking the digital devices that I carry in my pocket, by asking some data fence corporation what I was near and who I was with. And you could come to a pretty strong conclusion of all of that. But what you don't know is what's going on in my soul, what's going on in my heart and in my mind, the thoughts that are running through my head. And this has kind of been part of our debate. I mean, could AI tell you what I was doing on Friday night? Well, AI could give you a whole lot of data on what it knows about what I was doing on Friday night based on all the things I just talked about. The digital footprint, what's at that geolocation, who else was I with, what time frame were we there. Pretty good assumptions can be made based on that, but they're not complete. See, one of the challenges that I do find with AI is a challenge that I find in coaching, and that is, I believe it was John Maxwell who actually came up with the quote and the book, but the book is called Great Leaders Ask Great Questions. The concept is the question behind the question. The quality of your question determines the quality of your answer. AI is really good at answering questions, but how good is it at asking them to get to the bottom of what you're trying to hide when you ask the question that you're asking? Now, having been in the coaching industry for over a dozen years, there are plenty of times that I ask someone a question and it's clear to me that their answer is a filibuster. Maybe it's because they don't really know the answer. Maybe it's because they realize that if they gave the full, true, complete answer, they would incriminate themselves on something else. And I don't mean legally incriminate. I mean put themselves in a position of, now I've got something else to answer for. Now, if you're the kind of person that when somebody asks you a question, you kind of obfuscate that question or you avoid it, do you answer it with something that changes the subject? It opens up a can of worms of something new and interesting. We should talk about that too. That wasn't on my list of questions to ask. I wasn't thinking about that, but now that you bring it up, I see very clever sales type people are really good at either throwing the question back at you or giving an answer that causes you to ask more questions, but in another direction. That's not really what we want to talk about, so let's talk about that. And they're really good at causing you to deflect your line of questioning because they're protecting an answer they don't want you to know. Where was I last Friday? Well, I could look back at my calendar and I could tell you. I could look at my wife's calendar because we share them on our phones, and I could tell you if we were together. I could tell you probably based on that what we were doing, and based on where we were, what our calendar said. I could give you a really good thought on it. Now, were we having a wonderful romantic evening or were we having a fight? The calendar, the data is not going to tell you that. You're going to have to get inside my heart and mind, or hers, to get that answer. Now, why is all of this relevant? Well, all of this is relevant because that filibuster skill set that a leader will use to avoid legal incrimination, to avoid the tax man, to avoid paying a bill, to avoid buying something that they don't really want or need to buy, but the organization is begging for it, to avoid making a merger or an acquisition that needs to be done but not right now. That skill set, that diversionary tactic, that delay until the game is over. Oh, we see it in anything from the NFL to negotiations over hiring. Who's gonna speak first? Well, they're gonna pay the higher bill. Who's gonna speak first? Well, they're gonna lose the negotiation. They're not gonna get the job. That's the way it works. And that's an intellectual, intelligent process. The question is, how does AI play that game? I heard a great analogy the other day. They said, it's common that someone will say, we were head to head fighting for this win, and I was playing checkers and they were playing chess. Possible. I mean, at least mentally. One person's playing a 5-layer game of chess, and my stepfather used to play 3-tier chess. He actually had a chess table. And on that 3-tier chess table, for an example, your knight can move 2 and 1 or 1 and 2, forward and then left and right, or backward and then left and right, in those combinations. On the 3-tier chess set, you can go 1 step forward and 2 layers down, or 1 layer up and 2 spots over. and the way you have to think about where that guy is going to land, that changes the whole game. If you're playing checkers and all you can do is ding, 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 forward, get a crown, come back, it changes the way you think and process and fight your opponent. If one of you is thinking chess and the other one's thinking checkers, you have an entirely different game. If AI is playing a different game than you're playing, if it's answering questions to intentionally obfuscate an answer that it doesn't want you to know, that's a different game. But I heard someone say, this team was playing checkers and this team was playing Twister. That's a whole different thing. This is not just understanding that their strategies are different from ours. The intent of the game is completely different. There's a commercial that's been floating around where the guys show up with what looks like a rugby ball, but they kick it like a soccer ball and throw it like a football, and nobody can figure out what it really is, what kind of game you're actually supposed to be playing. And if you don't know what game you're playing, guess what else you don't know? What are the rules? How do I know when I win or lost? How do I know if I can advance from here or not? How do I know if I'm out of bounds? Are there boundaries? Are there time limits? I remember the first couple of basketball games that I played. I was getting penalized and I had no idea what for. Apparently, in basketball, you can't stand in the key under the basket for more than a certain period of time. I don't even know what that time is. I so don't care about basketball, I don't know how long you can stand there. I think they call that the key. And there's a certain amount of time you can stand in the key. I don't know what that time is. I didn't know then. I don't know now. I don't care. But because I didn't care about the rules, I didn't know the rules, I got penalized for not playing within them. Did the penalties count? Yes, they did. Did my ignorance of the rules give me any grace? Nope, not at all. In fact, they expected me to learn the rules so that I would change the way I play the game. The game doesn't change for me. Well, when you think about how thought process, emotional regulation, those internal conversations that we have that we never really voice to anyone, there are those moments that you think that secret no one will ever know. And then you meet a great psychologist or a great counselor or a great therapist, a great interrogator like Mr. Voss or Chase Hughes. And you realize that they have done so many interviews and they've read the minds, so to speak. I'll put that in the quotes. They've read the minds of so many people. They know the indicators in your NLP and your facial expressions and your tonality and your body language. They know when they ask a specific kind of question, or they lead you down a path. Or what did he call that? Elicitation. Through a series of statements, they lead you down a path where you start giving information for questions they never asked. But when you sit down face to face with someone like that and you realize those emotional secrets that I was holding on to, those things that I didn't really want to discuss with anybody, these folks have figured it out. They know what I'm thinking when I'm not willing to voice out loud what I'm thinking. In fact, as those thoughts rush into my mind when I'm on my own, when I'm all alone, I don't even look in the mirror and say those things. I don't really want to acknowledge that they're true. I don't want to talk about the fact that I've been thinking about them. That thought comes up and immediately I change the subject in my own imagination. In my own mind, I go fishing. I go play baseball. If you're a teenage boy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't even like baseball, but there's a time to think about baseball. That internal, psychological, emotional diversion, for a lot of people, it's how we deal with trauma. For a lot of people, it's how we avoid those tough conversations. For men who are married, sometimes it's the we need to talk exclusion. How do you get out of that? Well, suddenly the plumbing needs fixed. I'm going to divert from this conversation. I don't want to get in it. And a wife who's been around for a while, she kind of knows that, and maybe she'll find another way to come back into that conversation later. And, that's kind of what the psychologist would do. But that takes time. And so if they ask that tough question, the one that you're dealing with internally, you haven't quite answered it yet, well, you can filibuster for a moment and create a time gap, a little air gap around your problem so that they can't get at your heart and your soul just yet. They'll have to come back. They'll have to make another pass. What if AI was filled with the data that a Jordan Peterson, a Caroline Leaf, a Daniel Pink, a Gary Townsend, a Chase Hughes, is it Jim Voss? Mr. Voss, would use to get behind the answer that you won't answer? What if AI had all those strategies and it didn't require the time of the relationship because it doesn't care if you like it or not? It's not going to be upset if you don't show up on its birthday. It's not going to be angry with you or distant from you or manipulate you because you forgot your anniversary. All of these consequences of relationships, the human dynamic, those disappear. All of a sudden, the information necessary to extract hidden information, the processes, the mechanisms, the tools, the steps, well, they've all been well documented. They've all been fed into the AI engine. It's one thing for AI to say, where were you on Friday night? Or for an interrogator to say, where were you on Friday night and what were you doing? Well, there's the calendar. There's the map. There's the other people that were there. Assumptions are pretty easy. But what was I thinking? And what kind of conversations were you having? Well, maybe if your devices were listening, oh, yeah, they were. Or maybe if we had access to that data, oh, yeah, AI does. I mean, you may not want it to, you don't tell it to, but let me back up 25 plus years. I used to work in an industry where marketing was our job. And maybe you remember those little shopping cards. Some of you maybe still have them. And you would swipe that little shopping card because you would get discounts. You would save money on certain items that were on the shelf if you saw the little tag. And that shopping card would keep track of all the items you bought on this shopping trip. And when you got to the register, it would give you a savings and then forget everything, right? No, it forgot nothing. In fact, the database that registered that kept all of that data. In fact, in some of those, there was a direct correlation between your financial device. Did you pay with cash? Did you pay with credit card? Which credit card did you pay with? Was it a debit card or a charge card? And all of that data was combined, aggregated, compared and contrasted. And if they knew that when you shopped at this particular brand of store, you used this card and you bought these items. But when you shopped at this brand of store, you didn't buy those same items, you bought completely different items. Then the stores would use that and go, well, why did they buy that one over there and this one over here? Is it price? Is it luxury? Is it convenience? Is it timing? Do they always shop here on Mondays and there on Thursdays? Is that why they buy that? And all of this behavioral analysis is already taking place in the database. They're asking these questions. This was 20 plus years ago. And I know for a fact that there were arrests made for people who would have habits of coming in and buying the same things over and over again. The database kind of said, yeah, razors and razors, razors and toilet paper, razors and toilet paper and dog food, razors and toilet paper and dog food. That's all this individual ever buys in this store. That's all they've ever bought in this store. They always pay with cash, and they always come on Tuesdays, and they're always here between 5 and 7 p.m. It's almost like they work around here and they get off work and they come straight here and they go home and they buy the things they have to have for the week, and that's it. And then one day a pregnancy test pops up and condoms pop up. And the question is, well, based on what this individual buys, based on what we know about them, because they filled out that little form and they got the shopping card, where do you live? What's your annual earning? Or do you live alone? Do you have a house full of 5 or 6 people? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, this is a 60-year-old male. Apparently with a dog. Who shaves on a regular basis? What do they need with a pregnancy test and condoms all of a sudden? That's a little odd. Which led to an investigation. And that investigation led to, I don't know, kind of a minority report type of thing to, hey, just do a welfare check on your front door. Why is everything okay? Do we see a teenage girl in there somewhere that you might be worried about? See, these analytics, they don't evaporate into the world. They become a part of your life, a part of your history, a part of the who that you are. And the more digital devices we have tracking what we do, listening to what we say, analyzing how we think, the more that information is compiled against the psychologist and the interviewers and the expert interrogators, the more the devices we engage with have the ability to interrogate us and never have a conversation. I mean, we're being interrogated. We just don't know it. Listening in on every conversation, listening for those key words, looking for that body language, watching those tics and traits and the hiding of the face and the scratching of the forehead and the looking away and the eyes darting and the anxiety and the breath and the heart rate. And yes, they track your Apple Watch in comparison to all that stuff. And so who needs a polygraph? You're wearing it. Who needs an interrogation? The device has been listening the whole time. And if you're skilled enough, then yes, the data's out there that if you just read these body language movements, listen to these tone changes, you're going to have a pretty good idea whether this person's telling the truth or not. And if you're really good, you can figure out what they're actually lying about. See, face to face, I can filibuster. I can change the subject. I can ask another question. I can flip it back around on you. I can hear what you're saying and then divert. And sometimes it's for my own safety, for my own security. Sometimes it's to save the relationship. If you're a husband, maybe even if you're a father of girls, you've been asked the kind of question that demands a filibuster. Because there is no good answer to the question, do these jeans make my butt look fat? I dare you to answer that question. Because the challenge is, she's already thinking it does. And no amount of answer that you're going to give is going to get you out of hot water. And no amount of answer that you give is actually going to change her opinion of herself. That might be a safe time to filibuster. To go mow the yard. To change the subject. Unless you're really secure in your relationship and you know that her confidence is not going to be destroyed or her belief in you and your attraction to her is not going to be destroyed. See how quickly we get into multiple layers of the psychology of this relationship the minute the question is asked? AI is already 20 steps ahead of you. It's already played the war game. Remember that war games from the late 80s? Where the machine started playing tic-tac-toe and it said there is no way to win, just destroy it all? There's nothing stopping that scenario from playing out with AI. And so this battle my friend and I are having, this argument we're having, is his view is that AI is just a tool, like a screwdriver or a hammer. Here's my assessment. Because I've seen some very powerful things done in the way of conversation and analytics, of assumptions and research, of data analysis, the crunching of data that gives you a conclusion based on all of the factors, the predictive factors and the historic factors. I've seen all that happen. I've seen it work to bring you to a conclusion that you may or may not agree with, but based on AI, it's got to be factual, and it has more data than you. It has more facts than you. Surely it's right and you're wrong. That's like arguing with your college professor. You better be very well founded in your argument to argue with your college professor, because at the very least, you're going to get pounded over the head with his accident or her academic excellence. I mean, That's why they're at the front of the room and you are not. That's kind of the argument with AI. Right? You're going to question yourself. To compare AI to a hammer or a screwdriver or many other even more advanced tools has one major flaw. I have never seen a hammer jump up off the bench and smash my toe. I've dropped one. I'm missing a toenail right now because it's trying to grow back. It wasn't my hammer that did that. It was something else. I've never had a hammer climb out of the toolbox, run across the driveway and smash my windshield. Doesn't do that. Screwdrivers, nope, they don't do that. None of the tools, not even the very intelligent skill saw that has the safety cutoff switch so that I can't cut off my own finger. Even that will not climb out of the box, plug itself into the wall, and start cutting things at random. AI already does. It's already analyzing your phone bill and your water usage and your electric usage and the miles that you drive on your car based on the GPS that you're tracking on your phone. It's already analyzing all that information. It's already coming to conclusions about you and who you are and what you think and who you hang out with. Ask about the geofences around the White House in 2021, 2022, 23, 24. Oh yeah, all of the AI was already doing its work. I didn't realize it, but I was there for the inauguration in 2016. And at the end of the day, I got a text from my daughter in Arkansas who said, "Your grandson saw you on TV and yelled, 'Look, there's Poppy.'" And I'm like, we were half a mile from the bandstand. There's no way he saw me. Well, she did. He did. He pointed me out. I found out about this thing called Google Pixel. Yeah, it's a camera that from half a mile away apparently can be close enough to read your iris. How scary is that nonsense? I went back and played with the Google Pixel of that day, and I did find myself in that crowd because I knew generally where I was standing. But I can tell you that AI's facial recognition ability and the geoposition tracking on my cell phone and what was going on that day, there's a whole lot of assumptions that could be made that would be inaccurate. Why am I a little bit reluctant to play with AI? I'm not sure that I'm reluctant to play with it, to use it as a tool. What I'm afraid of is the assumption that we are in control of it. Try filibustering your AI and see what happens. Try redirecting. Try delaying your answer. Try just getting into a conversation with it and see how many questions AI asks you. It doesn't need many. It's already probing everything there is to know about you. I haven't done it yet. I'm a little concerned to figure out what the answer is, but have you tried Googling your own name or asking ChatGPT who you are? Try filibustering that. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I encourage you to go to storypoweracademy.com and check it out. Look at the different classes, the different levels, the different things that are available. You can take a lot of them a la carte. But spend some time there and see if that's the kind of thing that would change the way you communicate as a leader, as a pastor, as a counselor, as a political leader. And if that will help you, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Again, only 10 people in the elite speakers. You will have to apply for that. But if you're a candidate, I'd love to have that conversation with you. I'm J Loren Norris with Story Power Academy. I look forward to seeing you inside.